today's workshop is going to be about how to choose colors. I'm just going to try to teach you to the best of my ability how to choose colors. So half of the workshop is going to be me explaining color theory and just what artists worldwide turn to when choosing colors. And then the other half is going to be how I personally choose colors and things that I would suggest and things that I prioritize and all of that stuff. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoy and find it helpful. Okay, so like I said, the first thing I'm going to be introducing is color theory. So this is just going to be a whole bunch of terminology that I'm going to be using throughout the workshop, and just really common color schemes that can be found everywhere, from advertisements to just designs everywhere. So yeah. So first and foremost, primary colors. So as most of you might know, primary colors are used to mix other colors. You can't get them through any other means. And it's just blue, yellow, and red. Okay, so secondary colors are, you can get them when you mix primary colors. You don't mix anything else with them, just primary colors together. So these are orange, purple, and green. And then you have tertiary colors. These are colors you get when you mix a primary color, so red, blue, or yellow, with a secondary color, orange, purple, or green. So for example, this is kind of just the more specific shades of those colors, basically. It's not anything new. It's just, yeah, it's just like mixtures of the other colors and different shades and stuff. So for example, red, orange is a tertiary color, and you get it by mixing red, a primary color, and orange, a secondary color. So it's pretty simple. When you add all of these colors together, you get the color wheel. So this is composed of primary, secondary, and tertiary colors. And this is basically what color theory is based on. This is what we're going to be referring to throughout the color theory section of the workshop. So now I'm going to be introducing some terminology that you're probably familiar with. First of all, a hue is a color. It's just another word for color. What you see on screen right now, these are just different hues. Saturation is how pure or vibrant a color is. So here, you see all the colors at their purest, at their most vibrant, the ones on the far left. And people don't typically use these colors a lot, just because they're very jarring, and they're not very easy on the eyes, and people typically use them when paired with less saturated colors, just so because like if you use more than one extremely saturated color, it's going to clash most likely. So it's going to end up being very difficult to it's going to be very disorienting for the person looking at your drawing. So, and it's just going to be a very busy piece. And if you want that, then great. But most of the time, people don't do this. And as you go more right, you see more pastel versions of the color, and these are less saturated. Then you have value. Value refers to how light or dark a color is. So like I said, the ones on the very left, these are the most, these have the highest value, and the ones on the very right have the lowest. So they're very difficult to see with low value, and if you go lower, it turns into completely just black. And same with the others. If you go into like extremely low saturation, it turns to white. So people tend to avoid the two extremes, but they can be used. So I'm going to be introducing some very common color schemes. And this is just, you can use these as kind of a blueprint for venturing and finding your own color schemes. But this is just very basic. And yeah, so first of all, monochrome. So monochrome color schemes utilize only one color and just use different shades of that one color. Usually, these give you a very strong atmosphere and draw a lot of attention to the use of color, because you don't see these colors you don't see anything really that monochrome in real life. So when a person looks at a drawing that is completely monochrome, the first thing they notice, the first thing that registers in their brain is just the color scheme, because it's kind of like extreme in a way. So it's very good for building atmosphere if that's what you're going for. And then you have complementary colors. Complementary color schemes, sorry. These are colors that sit across from one another on the color wheel. They provide very good contrast, and the most common combinations are red and green, purple and yellow, and orange and blue. You have to be kind of careful when using complementary colors because they're already opposites. They already have that contrast, and if you use them at a point where they're too saturated, that's gonna make everything too busy and it's gonna clash, and it's gonna look confusing. It's not gonna look as cohesive. So people typically try to avoid using just pure forms of color in general, but especially when it comes to complementary colors. And by the way, like I'm going to be using a lot of Disney examples throughout the workshop because Disney uses color theory a lot, especially complementary colors. So as you can see, I could have found so many more examples, but I decided to focus on 3 because these are the most common 3 complementary color combinations. So Ariel has red and green, and then Rapunzel has purple and yellow, and Merida has blue and orange. And as you can see, like you can especially see this with Ariel, the red and the green are very muted, and the green is like a little, just a tiny bit blue. And you can just see how they're not using the most pure versions of the color. And it ends up being like really easy on the eyes, and the colors stand out when you look at it. Like when people think of Ariel, one of the first things they think is like red hair. It's one of the most iconic parts of the character. So these are the colors that stand out the most out of any in their designs because they're the most frequently used. So yeah. And then there's the analogous color scheme. The analogous color schemes are made up of 2 to 4 colors that sit right next to one another on the color wheel. So they end up being very similar because they're kind of the same, they have the same undertones and everything. They're just very similar. So, oh, somebody asked the question, sorry. So complementary colors are cohesive ones, colors which are suitable to be used in one sketch. Well, I mean, I guess you can, it's not just they're the cohesive ones because all of the ones that I'm going to be listing are cohesive. It just depends on how you use them. So if you use the most pure version of them, then it's not going to turn out very cohesive. It's going to be very busy. But if you use diluted versions of them or only use a very saturated or bright version of one of the colors and then kind of tone the other color down, then it becomes cohesive and they provide really nice contrast. And it just makes for a very nice color scheme. I don't know if that made sense. Sorry if it didn't. Analogous colors are 2 to 4 colors that are directly next to each other, like I said, and they're just very similar, and you can see them being used in this poster. So the atmosphere in this poster is very strong. Like you look at it and you get a very specific, like, I guess, like vibe. Like it has its own, it's like it's in its own little world, and that's because of the color use, because it just makes, like I said, a very thick atmosphere. It's just, they go really well together. So next, there's triadic color schemes. These use 3 colors that are equal in distance from one another on the color wheel. So here they used the primary colors, and actually secondary colors also count as triadic, and pretty much you can do that with any color, but the most used triadic color scheme is primary colors. As you can see, there's 3 colors between red and yellow, same thing with yellow and blue and red and blue. And this makes them very balanced. So you're not using just one type of one color, you have more variety basically. And you can see this in Superman's design where they use like a pretty bright version of each color. So there's bright red, blue, and yellow, but yellow is toned down. So you're not seeing as much of the yellow. And it works because it's not just a pure version of the color, there's also shading. So there's a variety of shades as well. It's not just one version of that color. So it ends up looking very nice, and Superman's design is very memorable. And this is one of the reasons, like just the use of color. Then you have split complementary color schemes. So this is made up of one base color. So you pick one color on one side of the color wheel, in this case blue. And then you add 2 colors next to its complementary. So here they used, they used blue-green, and they didn't pair it with orange like they would have if it was complementary. They paired it with yellow, orange, and red, and it ended up looking like, the thing with this one is that it is in a way complementary because it does use different like it uses one color and different forms of its complementary, like of its complement basically. but it gives you more of a variety there because it's mostly like one base color being used throughout the design and then a variety of another color. So you don't get things looking like they're only made up of two colors, if that makes sense. So here Genie is mostly blue, but the accents, I guess, are a different color. And it's just a nice little touch. So yeah. Tetradic colors. Okay, so these are not as common as the others. I had a little bit of trouble finding an example because these are kind of difficult to use because using one pair of complementary colors is already kind of, it's a little bit difficult to pull off and you have to pay attention. And using two sets of complementary colors is just more difficult because the more colors you use, the more action and the more, I guess, the busier the picture is. So it's difficult to make a picture out of this and not have it look jarring. But I found this stock photo and it does it really well. So I'm gonna explain why it does it really well. You have blue-green in the background. This is the first color that stands out to you. It's very, very bright and it's just vibrant. And then you have orange, which is also vibrant, but it's slightly less so. But for the most part, the parts of the picture that stand out the most are blue and orange. So these are the main components. And then you have the other set of complementary colors, which is red and green. And as you can see, I swatched them on the side just so you can compare, and they're much more muted and they're darker. So they kind of blend, not blend into the background, but they don't catch your eye as fast. So it makes like, so when a person's looking at it, they're not going to be confused where to look, and it's not going to be disorienting. It kind of, it's just like they look at it and like they naturally look at the brightest to the least bright colors. So it ends up not being jarring. So yeah, this is tetradic colors, but once again, this is uncommon. So the last one is square colors, square color schemes. So this uses two sets of complementary colors like tetradic, but they use colors that are equidistant from one another on the color wheel. So once again, like the triadic, they have equal amounts of, like equal numbers of shades between them. And this, like, again, it makes it so much more balanced. So here, the most present color in this poster, okay, so the colors that are present here, the two pairs are red and green and blue and yellow. And the first thing your eye is drawn to is either the yellow or the blue. The blue because it's the background color, it's the most present in the image. But then you look at the yellow because it's glowing and it's right in the middle. So you kind of notice the blue and then your eye is drawn to the yellow. So that's the first complementary set. And then you have red and green, which are a little bit, red isn't as much like muted because you can see the red very clearly. Once again, it's in the middle. If you're looking at the yellow, you're looking at the red part. But the green is a little bit more in the background and it doesn't stand out as much because it's just like in one area. And you can kind of see it in Joy's dress, but that's like, it looks more like a yellow. So you can't have a lot of colors that are very, very saturated is what I'm saying. So if you're gonna use these and it's gonna have a lot of different colors, then you're gonna have to be careful and make some sort of hierarchy in terms of colors that are brightest and colors that are least bright. And just keep in mind, like you want to make the object that has the most significance to be the brightest. So like if you have an object that you don't want people to pay attention to, you wouldn't make it bright red. You would want it to blend more into the background and be less noticeable. So yeah. So that's it for color theory, basically. The thing about color theory is that it is a good basis to start on. It's a good thing to know. And it's foundational information. Like you just have it at the back of your head, but it's not everything. So definitely utilize color theory and those color schemes because they're used everywhere and they're very successful. But don't be afraid to venture out of that because, like, especially if you're trying to have like your own style of coloring, for example, it does a lot of it really like improves your skills if you go out and venture on your own and if you don't just use color theory. And it gives you your own little like unique style. So yeah. So a lot of people think of coloring as like last step. And it's just like the main thing is just doing the drawing, and then the very last thing is like coloring. And I tend to think like that as well. But this isn't, this kind of undermines the importance of color in drawings. So like it's better to give the colors in your drawing a lot more thought, because they are what first draws the eye. And just you can do a lot with the use of color. So in this workshop, I'm going to focus more on how color can be used to build atmosphere or set a mood. And I'm kind of going to briefly mention how you create a focal point by using color, and how you can tell a story also through the use of color. But mostly I'm going to focus on building an atmosphere or setting a mood, because that's what I usually use color for. So when you first think of a drawing, you have this image in your head of what you want the drawing to convey, what emotions you want it to evoke, and like kind of the aesthetic that you want it to be. So what I find very helpful here to guide me through the process of getting the colors that I want and getting the result that I'm looking for is using mood boards. So just you go online and you look up either pictures, mood boards, drawings, anything of the theme that you're looking at. For example, I was looking for pastels, and I just looked up mood boards for pastels, and then I ended up with something that I kind of wanted to emulate in terms of color scheme. Doing this helps you really figure out what colors are typically present in the setting that you want your drawing to be in, and what colors usually fit with the aesthetic that you want the drawing to be. So here, I just downloaded this mood board and I imported it to Procreate, but whatever program you use, you can do that with. And if you use traditional, you can just like swatch down the colors on a piece of paper or a canvas or something. So I just took this and I imported it to Procreate, and I dropped every single color that I thought stood out, and every color that I thought made these drawings special and made these drawings a part of that theme that I'm looking for. And I just jotted them down. And from there, I didn't stop at this color scheme, because you like, as you progress, you're gonna change a lot of things. So I kind of like, for example, I removed the green entirely because I thought the green was too minty and I wanted a dreamier look. And I thought the blues and the purples and pinks fit really well. And the yellow is a nice break from the blues and purples, because I didn't want it to be monochromatic. And yeah, so as you can see, I started with like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I started with 8 colors, and then I ended up using very little of that. So that's also a thing that's going to happen as you develop your color scheme. But having mood boards is very helpful. It's a very good starting point. And I've been like, every time I'm lost with a color scheme, that's what I go directly to. So yeah. So once again, this is something that you might be familiar with, color temperatures. So colors can be split into 2 categories: warm colors and cool colors. And these have their own separate set of emotions that they're often associated with. Of course, this isn't like set in stone or anything. You can definitely make an illustration with cool colors that is comforting and happy, but this is just what they're typically used for. So warm colors are usually like red, yellow, and orange, and they're associated with more warmth and comfort and happiness and coziness and just energy. And then you have cool colors, which are like blue, purple, pinks and greens, some pinks and greens, because pinks and greens can definitely be warm. And grays can also fit under these categories. You can have warm grays and cool grays, and they can be very helpful. Cool colors are often associated with sadness, gloominess, distress, and they feel very distant and cold. And yeah, these are the color temperatures. However, I have an example here. This is the same drawing, but I've overlaid different colors over it in Procreate. That's also a thing that I'm going to talk about later. It's a very helpful tool. But as you can see, the green one, while it is green, it's like a yellowish green. It's on the warmer side. It looks very like sunny and bright, and it kind of has like a hint of success to it. Like it looks happy, even if like there's like a little bit of tension, but it's a happy drawing. But then you look at the blue one and it looks gloomy and there's a lot of tension, and it's just it feels distant and cold, like I said earlier. So it really, like, just the use of color really changes the way your drawing is perceived. So then you go to, then like after thinking about colors, you have to think about how, like, you have to narrow it down more, basically. Because it's not just like if you use this one color scheme, it's going to give you this. More specific colors are associated with more specific, I guess, emotions or themes. So blue can either be like tranquility or calmness and sereneness, or it can be like sadness and gloominess and distress. Red can also be like anger, passion, strength, and power, and all of this stuff. You can also make it like more pink to make it more like soft, but generally this is what red is associated with. Then yellow is joy and brightness and energy, and it's lively. And green is associated with freshness and nature. It can also be associated with disgust and envy. So it really depends on how you use it and the subject of your drawing. And then purple is associated with royalty and mystery. And this is why I usually see purple in pieces that are more like mystical and magical. There's always like hints of purple and like some green with it as well. And it just makes for an interesting like drawing, and it makes the person looking at it want to know more. And then brown is associated with warmth and coziness. It could also be like it could be very earthy depending on how you use it, but yeah, this is what they're generally associated with. So these are some examples. The first one, I used a lot of green and yellow, and even the blue is like very vivid, I guess. And it's just like a nice, sunny, warm drawing, and it's very positive. And then the second one, it just has this, it's mostly brown. It's mostly just literally different shades of brown. Wait, another question, sorry. I've been told the colors like red and yellow can be used in ads because they're more attractive. But what if we use cool colors? Will it make the pics and art less attractive? No. Actually, a lot of apps use the color blue because it's a serene color. It's calming. Like, it really depends on the way you use the color. At the end of the day, you can't just depend on the use of color. It's also the subject, and it's how you use it. So yeah, like at the end of the day, we can't really limit colors to certain emotions, but this is generally what they're associated with. Also, it doesn't mean like less attractive. It's associated with different emotions. The drawing in the middle is very brown, and even in the shades that aren't brown, like for example, the beige in the fairy light and the light of the computer, they're still very warm toned. And this makes it very cozy and like warm. And that is what I wanted to evoke with this drawing. That is the mood that I wanted it to have. Okay. The last one is very, like, it's not just blue and it has like very blue tones. It's also very desaturated, so that makes it like look more muddy, I guess, and more just negative in a way. And okay, so this is another thing that I want to discuss. It's not just the use of colors that makes for, it's not just the colors themselves is what I'm trying to say that makes like for a specific atmosphere. It's also the values and saturation of those colors. So for example, bright saturated colors are fun and playful. So to answer your like to add on to that question, if you use like a light blue or like a baby blue or even just cobalt blue, that's gonna make for a very bright picture or a very bright ad or logo or whatever. So it also depends on saturation and value. So like I said, bright saturated colors are fun and playful and all of that. And then desaturated grayish colors are somber and distant and they feel melancholic. And then pastel colors are soft and cute and they're very gentle on the eyes and they just have their own kind of, they're their own little world basically. So as you can see, I've attached drawings that I've made that specifically I wanted to, like, specifically I took them in those directions. Like the first one is like with the shapes and everything and the colors and how bright everything is and just how, like, see, this is another example of like orange being kind of cool toned. Like at the end of the day, it depends on how you use them. But yeah, it ended up being bright and like lively. And then the second one is kind of perplexing in a way. Like she just looks like a bit confused and then everything is desaturated and dark and it looks stormy kind of. And then the last one is just cute and soft and it's its own little world, like I said. Like that also matches with the subject of the drawing, with the little food yeah, like they don't look realistic. So now I'm going to talk about creating a focal point. I don't do this that much, but this is one of the drawings where I did do it. If you want to draw attention to a certain part of a drawing, make it the most saturated. And don't overdo this, obviously, but like here, for example, the sharks are very desaturated and blue. They're very gray. And then it kind of draws your eye into the middle, which is the mermaid, and her tail is super bright purple, and it's very saturated, and there's these shades of like vibrant turquoise, and that draws your eye in. And plus like the little accents of pink with the glitter and all of that, the whole purpose was to draw your eye into the middle. And this is what I tried to do here. And there are many other examples of this, but yeah, this is why it's important not to overdo saturation, because your eye won't know where to go. Jojo embraces saturated colors to another level. Yeah, the thing is with, yep, I know. I feel like with anime, they use saturated colors, like in everything is kind of saturated with most anime that I've watched, and it's ended up looking cohesive. So it really depends on how you use it. So I want to talk about contrast as well, because I feel like people, including me, forget about this. So it's very important to keep in mind that you have to have some kind of variation in values for things to stand out. If you look at the first drawing, the hair stands out against the face, and then the glasses stand out against the face, and the white bunny thingies stand out against the sweater, and everything is distinct. You can tell the elements of the drawing apart. However, I made a mistake with the second one, and if you look at it, like the value of the hair and the value of the dress are almost the exact same. And then the value of the shirt under the dress, which you can't even see that well, and the value of the background, the little like clouds, they're also very similar. So if I had made some kind of contrast and made one lighter or the other darker, then that would have been fixed. But like it's just important to keep in mind, because it can really mess up your whole drawing. And an easy way to figure this out, I guess, and figure out if you're doing this correctly or not, because the colors can be very distracting and trick you into thinking things are different. But no, I've turned the pictures into black and white, and that helps a lot because it takes away all the color and you just see the values. So in the first one, you can see everything still stands out to the same extent, like you can still tell things apart. But in the second one, you can't really tell where the hair ends and the dress begins, because the hair is actually a lot longer than it looks. It just literally blended into the dress. So yeah, just keep contrast in mind. It's very important. It's very important to limit your color scheme. It's not like very important, but it's very helpful. And it gives you a more cohesive vision of what you want the drawing to be. And you end up not messing up as much, and you kind of can tell where you're going with the drawing. And you can always add more color as you go, but like reducing color is very time consuming, especially if you're working traditionally. It's basically impossible. Like if you set down a dark color in watercolors, you're gonna have to repeat everything. So keep this in mind. So this is just one method that I use for picking colors, and I do this when I'm kind of stuck. First thing, I pick 3 similar colors. I have an example after this if this is confusing. I pick 3 similar colors, so like 3 warm colors or something. And after that, I go and I pick, the 3 similar colors make them different in values because of the contrast thing again. Then I pick 2 different colors different from the first 3, so it doesn't end up too monochrome. And then kind of just look at the selection of colors that you have now and figure out which one fits your theme the best, and just overlay it over everything and set it to like multiply or any other setting and play with the opacity to make them all fit together better. And as you go, fix things, but yeah, just after that color. So here I did that, and I picked the first 3 colors very similar to one another, and then I picked green and blue. I ended up getting rid of the green because once again, like you work on palettes as you go. And the blue ended up standing out really, like, in my opinion, like it ended up standing out pretty well. And I ended up accomplishing pretty much my goal with this drawing. This is the color scheme that I wanted. So I found this very effective. Sorry if I'm talking fast, there's like a little bit left and there's not much time. Another thing that's very helpful is picking color schemes. Picking color schemes and like reflecting them in thumbnails. So here you just take the sketch before coloring anything in, and you just quickly color it in with a few ideas you have for colors, because sometimes the color schemes that we pick don't translate as well onto the actual drawing. So just to make sure that just to make sure that the blocking of the colors is coherent and it looks the way you want it to, this is a very good idea. And it doesn't take much time. Like, do not focus on the specifics. Just go in, color with anything. Don't worry about details or anything. And just compare. Like, the first one that catches your eye and you like it best, go with that one, because most likely that's the one that's gonna look best at the end. So yeah, and if you're working traditionally, once again, you can just make a little sketch and then color it in quickly. So after finishing a drawing, what I do is, I know a lot of people do this as well, put a layer of colors or a few different colors over everything and experiment with the settings and opacity. So I have a little video, and I'm not going to play the whole thing, but you just put one color, and then here I kind of just go through the list of settings that are available. And that doesn't mean that you have to use them. It just lets you know the different options that you have, and in case maybe you want to change something last minute. And yeah, I find this very helpful. At times I would color something completely, then I would find a better option here and it would look 10 times better. It's a very helpful tool. And yeah, so I'm pretty sure this is my last point. Line art and shading. So I feel like a lot of people just go straight in with black, including me. But I'm not saying that's wrong, because that can look very good. But I feel like experimenting with different line art colors can really help you figure out what color scheme you want to get and what color scheme you want to aim for, and maybe like figure out different possibilities. Because sometimes when using pastel color schemes, it's very like, the black washes it out. It's just too heavy and overpowering, and it takes away a lot from the actual scheme. It undermines it. And it looks a lot better if you use like a darker version of one of the most prominent colors. And yeah. And also, this works if you shade with colors different than gray or something. Like, it brings more color to the piece. These are some examples of some of my pastel drawings and how they would look lined with black. And they take away so much from the color scheme. It washes it out completely. And with the pink, it looks more dreamy and soft. And that's what I'm going for. And yeah, that's it. Thank you so much for listening. And I hope this was helpful.